day after class, and I says, this was in February 1945. And I says, what the heck did I do wrong now? So I went into his office. He says, sit down. He says, you're going to be 18 pretty soon. I says, yeah, next week. He says, you thought about the service? He says, I says, well, I was thinking about joining the Navy. He says, well, go ahead and join. He says, you have enough credits now to graduate, so you can join anytime you want. So the 26th of February, I enlisted, according to the records down in New Haven. But as far as I know, I went to Hartford. Then I left school.
What school was that?
Canton High School. And I left, and I was working at the A&P, and I started working there, and I got called up April the 12th, 1945. That's the day that President Roosevelt passed away. And I went to boot camp up in Sampson, New York on Friday the 13th. I got to boot camp and it was too late for breakfast. We traveled all night by train somewhere, Lehigh Valley. We got up there and they served us bologna sandwiches. Well, I never saw an ash can or a garbage can fill up so quick with stuff that we didn't want to eat. So that's how I started up in Sampson, New York. And that's on one of the Finger Lakes up there. That's where I took my boot camp.
Now, the first day you had to get a set of a new uniform.
Yes.
And tell me about that experience.
Well, the first, you know, they passed out dungarees and shirts and all that, and I got dressed into the dungarees, and then we went to lunch. And then we went up to get rid of the dishes in the cafeteria, and the guy behind me didn't finish his milk, which was in a carton, and it spilt on the rear end of my trousers, and I didn't know, and I got nailed for that, for having dirty trousers right off the bat. I said, oh boy, this is the way. Well, luckily, we were put into an experimental outfit that had all fluorescent lights that's supposed to kill all the germs and everything else, and the only thing we had to do was make up our beds every day. That was it. And then, of course, then we went on to doing everything that they want to teach you now.
Okay, tell me about what they taught you.
Well, first of all, they started teaching us how to march. After we learned how to march, then we had I went to they had one day for shooting rifles. Well, of course, I shot a .22, so that's what they gave us to shoot. And then after that, we had to go up onto for jumping, simulating jumping off of a boat in case you got hit by something. And you had to climb up. Well, we went into a swimming pool. And luckily, all the life vests were so wet, they says, just hang on to your body and jump off the ladder. Well, and I couldn't swim at the time, so I said, okay, what the heck? And the guy that was teaching, he says, all right, he says, stand at attention when I say take one step forward. That's what you did. Down I went. Well, they had anybody there that had trouble getting out of the water. I didn't have any trouble there, and that was it. And then they told me that, this was in, April through May. It was cold up there, and we didn't have no PX because it had burned down sometime in January. They hadn't built it yet. But after that, come June, they says, he says, do you want to stay with your company and graduate with them, or do you want to leave early and graduate with your high school? I said, no, I'm going to stay with this outfit. So I stayed, and I got home sometime in late June for the first leave. And when I got home, my mother told me that she went up and picked up my diploma. She got the second biggest applause. The biggest applause was one of my classmates that went into the Navy in December, was home on leave in a uniform. He got the biggest applause. So from there I went back to Sampson, New York, and from there, the OGU, outgoing units or something like that, they shipped me out to San Diego, California to radar school. I spent from July until August or September, graduated from that, and then they sent me up to Camp Pendleton, Camp Shoemaker, Treasure Island, and from Treasure Island they shipped us back to the east, and I picked up my ship in Savannah, Georgia, in the Savannah River. The first day on the river, I heaved up. That's what we're leaving. They'd given us powdered eggs for breakfast, and I never had powdered eggs in my life. So, and we had the captain of that ship which was a cargo ship, and I was going over to, well, I didn't know where I was going until the end. I landed in Marseille, France. A pig hole, I guess. But anyway, every time we got rough seas, I was sick. And the captain, he was British, he says, put a bucket beside you because you're operating the radar. And we had another fellow that was supposed to be with me, and all he did was sit in his bunk and look at comic books, and he got bed sores, and they took him off the ship in Marseille and put him in a hospital. So I was the only one to operate the radar. We went from Marseille, France to Toulon, France, and from Toulon, France, someplace over in Africa. And my job was coming back, was we were bringing the troops back from the Lucky Strike camp. The war was over by then, and we were bringing troops back to New York. And I missed Thanksgiving first, but I got home in time for Christmas in 1945, and they discharged me in July of '46.
You covered that so fast with no details. So back up a minute.
Okay.
Go back to your boot camp. What about, you were there about 8 weeks, I assume.
Yes,
So
10
what,
weeks.
what did you do for 8 weeks? And another question while you're at it, did you get a break? Did you get a liberty and go into the nearby town?
We went to Liberty, someplace where it was retired kids in school. They sent us to town for one day. I forgot what town it was up there, but I guess it was it's where the pool pumps are made.
Is that Seneca?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then from that was it. I was 18, so guys try to sneak liquor in.
But you must have had calisthenics every day, marching every day.
And on a grinder every day.
On a grinder, right.
Yeah. And that was about it. I missed a lot of the training for parades and stuff because they were trying to find out what I was going to be doing after I got out of the boot camp. I was going to different classes and stuff like that, especially on Saturdays.
Back up. Did you go through knot tying? Did they teach how to tie knots?
Yes. Yeah, I knew how to tie the square knot anyway, but then I learned the bow line and all that stuff, and I still have my Blue Jackets manual here somewhere.
Now, speaking of Blue Jackets manual,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they spent quite a bit of time on that.
Yeah. Yes.
What do you remember about it?
Well, we were studying, first of all, they were trying to teach us how to use the flags. That was tough,
Right.
But after that, then the radio. I was thinking about being a radio man, but I couldn't type. So they said, we're not going to teach you how to type. So I ended up, like I said, going to radar school.
Now, is that something you enjoyed?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any previous technical background?
No, not really. The only thing that was that there was 26 of us in my class, and they gave us notebooks to keep all the notes. And after we graduated, they says, turn your notebooks in. It's top secret. So we said, what we learned, we had to learn to keep it up in our heads. We couldn't go back to our notebooks to study anything.
Do you have a class photo?
Yes, and
Think you can find it?
no, where it is, it's up in Sampson, New York.
Oh, okay. And how about you have a class roster of your shipmates?
Yeah,
in
yes,
boot camp?
well, the Blue Jack manual, I got autographs in there. Most of them were all from Pennsylvania. That's a couple from New York. It's funny. Sampson, New York. Now it's a state cemetery up there where the boot camp was, and then become an Air Force camp. And I went for one reunion, and I met this. And what they did was they had Navy caps on with the year that you were there. So I'm looking around for somebody who's at 45. I met this one fellow, and he lives in Massachusetts now. And I said to him, "What class were you in?" He says, D. D was for Dewey. In 212, I says, I was in that camp. I says, but he says, I'm from the Bronx, New York. I says, the young guy I can remember from the Bronx, New York, I says, was when we were learning how to jump off a ship, and we had to jump into the pool, and we had to climb up the cargo nets to get up to the top of the platform to jump off. And this one guy couldn't make it. He says, that was me. So, we got, we had a good time up there, but...
Now, have you maintained contact with him or any others since
Oh,
those
yeah,
days?
we get Christmas cards. And,
Excellent.
yeah. But, I talked to a guy that was right behind me in class to join the Navy with me. He lived in Burlington, and we joined together, but where he went after where I was sent, I went to radar school. I don't know what happened to him, but I see him once in a while.
Oh, you do? So he's still with us?
Oh, yeah. His name is Joey Dublack. Then when I come out of the service, we had, what was it, 52 weeks or something, they gave us so much money.
5220.
Yeah, 5220. And then from there I went to GI school and went to be an electronic technician.
Okay, but back up. The radar school was where? And for
San
how long?
Diego, Point Loma.
Tell me about it.
Well, it was a Marine base, but because we're going to school, we were pretty free to go do what we wanted to do. But otherwise it was, the Marines, they were really tough on them.
So you must have had liberty. You must have went into town.
Yeah, but San Diego at that time, it was off limits in a lot of places because it was right next to the Mexican border, for crying out loud. Like Tijuana.
Right.
No way would they let you go there. And so that was that. And then I spent, the whole 26 of us that were in the radar class, we got shipped, like I said, from one receiving station to another. I don't think they knew what the heck to do with us until, in the end, they put us into the armed guard. And the armed guard is, Navy personnel was assigned to a cargo ship to make sure that, at the time there was gunner's mates and radio men and signalmen on board, but when I was there, they were all gone. I was the only Navy personnel on my ship, and I was there with about 3 people from the Army.
Now, what kind of ship was that?
It was the SS Samuel Ash. It was a cargo ship, Liberty ship.
Right.
The fastest it would go was 10 knots an hour. So you know what that is, seeing that you were in the Navy.
So you went from where to where to where?
I went from Savannah, Georgia, to Marseille, France, to Toulon, France, and then about 2 or 3 places in Africa, which I didn't know.
Now, how long did it take you to go from these places to the next place?
Well, from United States to Marseille, France, it took us 2 weeks. And then from there we went to Toulon. That was only a day and a half or something. And over to Africa, it was about another 2 weeks.
So what did you do with your time on board all that time?
Well, if I wasn't operating radar, nothing.
Okay.
So
you play cards, shoot the bull,
no, because
sleep.
I read a lot, and but they went. we weren't supposed to contact any of the crew because they were merchant marines. And we contacted them, but one of them was from a Georgia prison camp. He raised up his pants and showed us where the brackets were on the chains on his ankles before they released him. That's the kind of people that were on the merchant ship.
How about the officers?
Oh, the only one we had was the British captain. He was a son of a gun.
In what sense? What did they do?
Well, what do you mean? What did he do?
You say he was a son of a gun. I want you to
Oh, well,
elaborate.
he was British, and he didn't think much of Americans. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, even though we're on the same side.
How did he show it to you?
Oh, well, one thing he threw it. One time the power went off on a radar or something, I don't know, and I didn't know it, and it came at nighttime, and he wanted a radar on, so I had to go up on the ladder and unlock it and get the power back on, and then go use the operator. He says, I'm gonna nail you, he says, for not having the power on at when you're supposed to be. I says, that's all right, I says, and then I'm going to tell him that you had big shot officials from France coming on board and looking at the radar, which was illegal. After that, he was nice as pie to me.
Amazing.
Yeah. But, in the Army personnel, one guy was much older than, he was in his 40s, and he was just like us. I was a son to him. He watched over me all the time. I was on
Now,
board
what was
the
his
ship.
duty on?
Well, they ran the commissary. They brought stuff back from, to sell to or give to the GIs coming back home. And luckily, and they were selling it too. I mean, it was a black market, and the only thing they couldn't do was they couldn't change the francs into American money. But I could, because they still had a post office, Navy post office, over in France, and so they got me to transfer all their francs into American money, or so they could send it home, and I got part of it. So, and I never, and we're selling cigarettes at $10 a pack, and we're buying them for about 50 cents a pack.
About how many Army people would be on that ship?
3.
And how many Navy?
1.
Okay, I thought you said one.
Yeah, myself. Well, they're supposed to be 2, but when they put him into sick bay and over in France, that was it. They didn't have nobody to replace him. And most of the time I was in dungarees and work shirts, and the only time I was in uniform was the day we came into New York Harbor, because all the fire bolts were out there, and blowing the water over in front of us, and because the GIs were on board that ship, and of course I got in the dress blues, and they saw me for the first time in dress blues, and they all applauded me. I said, hey, I'm one of you guys too.
Well, how about the ports you're in? Did you take liberty in those ports?
Yeah, yes.
And how was that? What were your experiences
Well,
there?
we couldn't understand the languages, and the food was terrible. The food on board ship was pretty good because, that was for the merchant ships.
So would your liberty be just for 24 hours or more
Yes.
than 24?
One day, myself and one of the Army we took a train ride into, I don't know where the heck it was. It's in France. It was an overnight. And there were all Russians in the town we went into, so we didn't stay there too long. We hauled ourselves back to that. That was about it.
And just out of curiosity, what was the problem with the Russians?
Well, we couldn't understand what they were saying, and we were told to stay away from them, so we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
You went to another port. What happened there?
Nothing. We just, Well, one thing what happened was when we were unloading the ship in Marseille, we had German war prisoners were unloading the ship for us, and the operators were French. And one guy, one of the French operating one of the cranes, tried to drop a whole stack of material onto the Germans, and we caught him at it, and then they threw him off the ship.
Good.
And in fact, they probably put him into jail. I don't know, but they took him off the ship. And,
Now, did you have contact with the Germans?
oh yeah, they were nice.
Elaborate on that.
No, they were, they're prisoners of wars, and that was it. Yeah. But talking about the prisoners of war, we're out there in California. We were stationed right next to a camp where they put all the Japanese people into a camp. And, they took them from the cities and put them into a camp out there in California. I forgot which station it was, but I think it was Shoemaker, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Then where?
That was it, we couldn't talk to them, but that was it.
Now, what do you feel the Navy experience did for you? Or to you?
It grew me up a lot quicker, much quicker.
Expand on that.
Yeah. Well, I was just out of high school and green behind the ears, and I never had to make my bed or do anything like that or wash my clothes and all that stuff, and that's what is it. So that was that. Grew pretty quick.
And your discharge was where?
Lido Beach, New York. I'll never forget that. I came back. I got to tell you one thing, George. When I got back to the Brooklyn Armed Guard Center, I got stationed, well, they call it the Radio Shack, and the commander was Jewish. Not that I care, but he had two nephews that were Jewish in the same office that they put me in. I guess he kept them out of going overseas. But anyway, the first Armed Forces parade in New York, he says, I got to have one guy from this outfit march in the parade. So you guys pick it out how you want. Well, the two Jewish guys, they got together and they said, we'll draw sticks. Shortest one goes. Well, I ended up going. And I'm marching down Fifth Avenue. It was almost about 4 miles walking. I'm on the inside. And we stopped once, and there's the RCA movie news cameras going, and they're laughing like heck. And I said, I turn around, we're at parade rest. And I says, what's so funny? He says, well, right in front of you guys, he says, is the West Point cadets. He says, and their hats are just as perfectly level as a son of a gun. He says, you guys are like a basketball. You're all bouncing up and down. We're all out of steps. So I laughed. So anyway, a week later, the commander says, who marched in the parade for Armed Forces Day? I says, I did, sir. He says, I don't want to see you for the next 10 days. Well, the other two guys were sort of upset about that. So that was that part of it.
Now,
So,
approximately, what was the date of that?
well,
That parade?
oh,
Approximately when was that?
that was 1946.
Okay.
It's the first one. Yeah, marching down Fifth Avenue. Then after that, I guess, now they have it every year, I think.
Well, there had to be a lot of celebrations that
Oh yeah,
day.
yeah. Well, the biggest celebration I went to was VJ Day. I was in San Francisco.
Well, tell me about it.
And the liquor stores, they were just throwing the liquor right out onto the streets. No, they didn't care who took it. And and of course there was a big picture, the sailor kissing a nurse in New York, but we're out in San Francisco. VJ Day, I was in boot camp up in Sampson, New York.
You just got me thinking about VJ Day, and you said San Francisco.
Yeah.
Did you get to go across the Golden Gate Bridge?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, well, I was stationed in Treasure Island.
And so, tell me about that.
Yeah, well, that was that was a pretty nice place to be. You know, every day we had liberty, and I'll never forget once I was going up to, I think to get an ice cream cone or something, and coming down the steps, I see this about four yellow stripes on the shirt, and I salute him quick like, and he saluted me, and he said, "Hey, sailor," he says, "let's try that salute again." He says, "It was pretty sloppy." He was a commander of a submarine, so you know, he says, "Oh, that's better, sailor. Have a good day," and that was that. But you know, otherwise, Treasure Island was, you know, we had big shows coming on. Roy Rogers came out, and a couple others put on the show.
So you saw his show?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What do you remember about it?
Oh, not too much, except you know, he's a cowboy in the movies, and
No horse?
and Dale, and singing.
No horse that day?
No, well, I don't know if he had a horse or not. I can't remember, George. He probably did.
Yeah. Did he have his wife Dale with him at the
Yes, he had her. I guess he had the horse. Trigger?
time? Yeah.
Yeah,
See, it's coming back, right?
yeah. Right. You know, it's a long time ago,
Right.
wasn't it? Yeah.
So, where do we go after that?
Well, that was, you know, then we, from San Francisco, when they shipped us back east.
And you said you went directly to Lido, or did you stop off somewhere in between?
No, we came all, we tried to catch an airplane back home, but no way, we had to take the train.
How many days did that take?
4 days. It's 4 days going out too, but luckily we were on a Pullman.
So you had
That was-
stops along the way, or what?
Oh yeah, we stopped in that one place in Nebraska where the people come out to give you donuts and orange juice or coffee, anything you want. They're famous for that. They still remember it. They were the nicest people I ever, you know, on a train. And I can remember going a train ride out that they were, well, we had to have our meals. We had to stand up with the holes in a board to hold the plates and everything, and I forgot what it was. Oh, we kept ending up getting tomato juice, and I says, "How come we getting tomato juice?" I said, "Where's the orange juice?" Well, what they were doing is they were going through these towns where Mexicans or Indians were living. They were throwing them off to them instead of giving it to us. You know, I can remember that.
Okay.
Okay.
Then you wind up in Lido Beach.
Well, that was Lido Beach was back in here in New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when I came. You know, after I got discharged, I went back to where I was, you know, stationed. I had my ribbons on and everything else, and he was a lieutenant, or an ensign. He says, Merz, he says, "Take that garbage off your chest. You're not in the service no more." And I can remember that. And then, luckily, when I was there, you know, I was in the radio room. And this one day, I just happened to mention to somebody that, you know, I was going on, you know, I had the weekend liberty. I says, "I got to catch a train up to Hartford, Connecticut." And this first class signalman says, "Where do you live?" I says, "In Collinsville." He says, "I'm from Torrington." And he had some sort of a connection when we got out early all the time. So he took me under his wing, and we went off to, every time we had liberty to go home, I went home with him, and we had an extra day. And that was that.
Okay, so you're discharged from Lido Beach.
Yeah,
You took the train to Hartford.
right.
And what did you do with yourself after that?
Well, for 52 weeks, I hung around. I loved baseball. We tried to get on the old Collinsville baseball team, but they didn't want no part of us because they already had up the team. So, you know, And then I went to GI school for electronics, Ward School of Electronics.
Oh, yes.
That's in Hartford, Connecticut. Now it's part of the University of Hartford. But anyway, we're having a heck of a time getting our money from the government. So I said, well, they got an office here in Hartford. I'm going up to see them and, complain. Well, I go up there and this colonel comes out. He looks at me. He says, are you Merz from Collinsville? I said, yeah. Well, he says his name was Mahoney. His father was the postmaster. Well, I got my check the next week. So, it's good to get to know somebody or that.
All
So
right,
that was that.
All right, so you went to Ward for how long?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
You got a certificate, an associate's degree from it?
Yeah.
And what did you do with that education?
Well, my mother worked for Pratt & Whitney and Small Tool, which is in West Hartford. Excuse me. And she got me a job wiring the gauges in the gauge division. Well, at the time, we were making the gauges to check the size of the TV tubes, and for Corn and Glass up in Corning, New York. And the vice president of sales was, he says, well, I gotta get somebody to set them up. Excuse me. Got a tickle. So I volunteered. I said, I'll go out there with you, sir. He says, well, he checked me out. And from then on, I got into the service rep for the gauge division. And I travel all over the country. Every state in the United States I was in.
Great.
Plus I went to Alaska 3 times on my own. They sent me to Hawaii. They sent me to Spain. And for Spain, back home. Then they sent me to Germany and Amsterdam, Netherlands. And then to South Africa. That was the worst trip I ever took.
Tell me about that.
Well, 18 hours on a plane, that was 12 hours late going out of New York. And they didn't tell the people in South Africa that it was late. And they had a chauffeur waiting for me all night long. That was that. And we had to stop for refueling, but we couldn't get off the plane. They had armed people with machine guns right across their chests, making sure nobody got off the plane.
It sounds to me like you could attribute your education after the service to being hooked on electronics.
Yes, it was, yeah.
See how life has turned for you.
Yeah. Well, it was pretty good. So,
Anything you'd like to add?
well, I was traveling all the time. I lived out of a suitcase, and everybody thought that was a big deal, but heck, I was up at Bradley Field almost every week, flying somewhere and flying back home, find out where I'm going next. And the only time it was a good time was when we had a trade show. Then all the salesmen come along and you had a good time with them, but everybody thought it was, going out every week, but that's,
Now, Art,
it's pretty tough,
as you know,
especially when you got
as you
lousy
know,
weather.
we're in your house right now, and I kidded you when I first came in. You're sort of high on a mountain.
Yeah,
Did you have anything to do with building this house?
yes, I had it built,
I thought so. Beautiful.
yeah. Well, I had it built with a couple of friends of mine who was a carpenter. In fact, they worked for Benoli in Avon, and he was a supervisor. And they got it. Well, they got my mother had the foundation put in, and then Then I started billing it, and Bonelli told him, if you guys want to moonlight in your own, he says, you won't be working for us no more. So then I had to go find somebody else to finish it. Well, I found a pretty good cabinet maker that finished the house for me. The only trouble was that he liked to tip his elbow, and every time I paid him, they had the restaurant up here, the PX. And, you know, I wouldn't see him for a week. I finally got the house built.
Well, I'd like to thank you. I told you on the phone, this interview is on behalf of the Connecticut Central State University Veterans History Project. So
Okay.
thank you very much, Art.